Okay, I said I was going to do another video about testing EGR valves on older cars that do not have computers. And I have an EGR valve. This is actually a working EGR valve. I took it off. I thought it was bad. Turns out I had it calibrated wrong. And that is simply when you buy these, you have to look at the old one and look at the box, or look on the paper in the box, and it tells you which O-ring or reducer. It's a metal ring that you put in either one of the two orifices. So you cannot bench test these with a vacuum pump. You can't even bench test these if you have a strong vacuum source, say engine vacuum from another vehicle. You cannot do that. These are designed with a heavy-duty spring in them, and basically what happens is the exhaust pressure pushes on it and helps it to open. And it actually doesn't open the way you would think. It actually is mechanically pulse modulated. When there is a vacuum source applied to this, the exhaust pressure behind it actually helps push the valve open. But as the valve opens, the pressure drops, so it drops back. So it actually pulse modulates opening and closing. The only way to know that if this is working properly is to use one of these to see if you have vacuum coming from whatever port on the engine. It's usually a ported vacuum port on the carburetor that only receives vacuum at certain throttle positions. On my vehicle, it's 2,000 RPMs is like a good place to start. It actually gets 15 inches of vacuum at 2,000 RPMs. And this is going to sound really dumb, but the way you tell if these are working is if you have a vacuum, you have 15 inches of vacuum, and then you check that, drop the idle back down, hook up the EGR valve to the vacuum source, raise the idle, and set it somehow, either with like on mine, I used my fast idle, my cold fast idle. I just raised it up and then pushed it down by hand, and it set it. My fast idle is around 2,000 RPM, so I had it set so it wasn't gonna move. I wasn't gonna be able to move it. And then I grabbed the vacuum hose going to the EGR valve, and the directions say that you pull the hose off, the idle should change slightly. It might go up, is what it's probably going to do. It might go up. So it's a good idea if you're doing the test to also have a tachometer, so you can actually see a change in the RPM. So it's nice to have one of these, and I just knocked a tool into my trash can, so let me get that out. Just put that back on my bench, which is a disastrous mess right now. But I'm not going to do the test actually on the vehicle because it's, the engine drowns out all the sound of the video, but I think the explanation is good enough. Basically, you want to make sure you have vacuum going to the EGR valve at the idle that operates at, which is between 2,000 and 3,500 RPMs. Like I said, I tested my spark port and I got 15 inches of vacuum to my valve at 2,000 RPMs. But as a general rule, it's probably not going to operate over 3,500 RPMs. Generally, this is way generalized here. But if you're looking to restore your EGR system on your vehicle, and it's a non-computer controlled vehicle, that is how you check it. Now, if you really got fancy, you could probably, I never tried this, you could probably put a dial meter in there and set it on the inside there up against the diaphragm and set it and then zero it out, and then you'd have to push it up so that it's up there a little bit, and then you could probably see the dial indicator moving back and forth, because you can actually take your finger very carefully and just put your finger, just touch in there just slightly while it's operating, and you could feel it fluttering back and forth. It's pretty interesting that they thought that it needed to be pulse modulated like that. And if you have certain engines that won't operate properly, or you got a lot of knock, you could do that. I got my old T-Bird over there with a 351 modified engine. I run regular 87 in it, and I'm 7 degrees over stock timing settings, and I have no knocks and no issues, because the EGR valve actually helps reduce knocks on certain engines, you know. And I know a lot of you guys, you'll restore a car and you'll remove all the emission systems. I've actually restored my car. I've restored the emission systems to their fully operating order. The only emission system I did not restore was the catalytic converters, for a variety of reasons, mostly because they cost so much to restore, and if you don't run the specific amount of exactly the way it needs to, you'll melt them things down. But mostly, if you buy a converter now for an older car, actually the price really drops. So it's mostly the fact that you gotta make sure your exhaust is balanced perfectly for those converters. I mean, I've seen the performance ones out there now that have the ability to run on a carbureted vehicle, the new design, the ones that won't plug up like the old ones that did in the 70s. But you know, I must move forward on this here. But yeah, basically I don't think that at this time I want to put those back on there. You know, car runs great, sounds great, no backfires. You know, obviously today it's a nice warm day. You know, I have already started the vehicle up. I took it for a quick drive down the road, but I could just reach in, fires right up. I mean, it's beautiful, you know. There's nothing wrong with restoring your emission systems on your vehicles. They're not going to really hurt you. They may have eventually even help you out a little bit here and there, but you know, who knows? I mean, I just wanted it to be, you know, I love these people that say all original, and they've pulled the motor, the trans, they've changed it all out and made all kinds of changes to the vehicle on the powertrain, and that to me is not all original. But right now I'm actually having trouble finding interior parts, seats in particular. I've heard you could get them redone, but like I said, this was about EGR valves. I can make another video reaching out to people out there for seats and stuff, and interior parts on old 70s T-Birds. But anyway, there it is, EGR valves, mechanical EGR valves. They're not that complicated. They're quite similar to their electronic counterparts of today, where they're modulated. They're just mechanically modulated. All right.